Lilybeth E. Navarro, B.A., B.S., M.A., Executive Director of Communities Actively Living Independent and Free.
Good afternoon. I'd like to thank Sister Paula for inviting me to this wonderful conference. And also I made it a resolution to thank my little sister Victoria over here, who has been my shadow for the last, 8 years. I used to be able to travel on my own and do things on my own. But now I need help, so she's with me all the time. And she's quite enjoying it, I think. Um, yeah. Yeah. So I came here from Los Angeles, and on the way I was meditating on that wonderful system of safety net that the American ingenuity has put together. Um, I had to be on a respirator last night. So I am put together I'm kept alive by a respirator at night on account of polio. I have 33% of my lung capacity. I had polio when I was 5 months old. And my parents were told that I had 2 weeks to live. And that's the longest 2 weeks of my life. I just celebrated my 56th birthday. so, um, so this wonderful system that we have here in America, the transit system. I didn't have to ask Sister Paula to please make arrangements for me to get here. I called paratransit. I'm here. They're gonna pick me up later. And the mass transit, when they don't show up, I can take the bus. I can, it's a wonderful system put together by pro-life people. Okay, people a civilization that believes in life. Amen. And it's a wonderful time to be disabled, actually. But that system is under threat. And it's getting to be very frightening. When I first came here, I thought I was in disability heaven, right? Like, I couldn't believe coming from where I was in the Philippines, where there's hardly anything for people with disabilities. It was good to experience all the conveniences here. And thank you. So, but very quickly, as soon as I arrived, I think I arrived during the Reagan years when they were beginning to cut the budgets for all the programs. The atmosphere began to change, and I found myself embroiled in the struggle to keep programs alive. And, I am very thankful that, that I have this experience, this assignment of being disabled, because it seems to be the label, it seems to be the just the right experience that cuts through the definition of life from the pre-birth stage to the end stage. And I tell you why I say this, because when I went to USA, I was assigned to study journalism there. I had a wonderful professor who was teaching me these radical ideas about disability, that you are disabled only in as much as society allows you or prevents you for doing things. Like, disability is relative, it's really dependent on the environment and the attitudes around you. So, and that people with disabilities have civil rights to access employment and the built environment and everything. So these were wonderful concepts that were new to me. It was like for me, I spent like more than 20 years of my life in the Philippines, and I'm thankful for that because most of those years I spent in a Catholic school, learning the wonderful tenets of our faith and about my dignity as a human being with a disability, and drawing from that crucified God my dignity as a disabled person. But to see in America the actual implementation of the blind can see, the lame could walk, this is where I saw the actualization of what the gospel says. And then to come here and to start, getting involved in the disability rights movement, like I said, was quite an education. When I was at USC and I was learning these wonderful ideas from my professor, at the same time, I began to see a dichotomy, because in the disability rights movement, we're very aligned to the left, these radical leftist ideas, very radical, and that, of course, required programs and funding for programs. They're a very democratic idea, right? And so people with disabilities are more aligned to the left political spectrum. But so I saw a dichotomy when they began to say, yeah, but when it comes to abortion, we side with the woman, And I'm like, yes, I have to side with the woman's right to choose? And I thought that was the first thing I had to challenge. And I said, but the baby cannot see, cannot hear, cannot walk, cannot talk. And so I wrote that, I formalized that argument in a paper, and my political science professor fought me. But eventually gave me an A minus. So starting from there, and then from there I discovered the wonderful Right to Life movement, and so that's how I became involved in the Right to Life struggle. But I didn't find too many of us in the disability rights movement that were thinking along the lines, along the same lines. But I was friends with both sides, and I maintained that friendship without having to be neutral. So, and I don't know if you guys knew Diane Coleman. She was originally from the East, and then she lived a few years here in California, and then she left. She left to start other ADAPT chapters, in the country. And before she left, she said something very profound to me that hit me like a seal in my soul. She said, Lilibeth, technology is moving very fast, she said. And there will come a time when it'll be an all-level playing field. And then what are we good for? I mean, we will be the people who will teach humanity how to be human again. She said, and that was like for me a pronouncement. And I thought about that, and I decided, I'll make that, a part of the guide, my guide for my life. And she left. By the way, I just talked to her a few weeks ago. I told her that I was going to do a presentation here, and so she's with me. She's praying for us today. But anyway, let me go to my official presentation, and I get to play with the light. Can we do the first?
Do you have the pointer? Yeah,
Yeah.
it goes.
The first.
Just press the button. first slide?
Hello.
Can you hit it over there?
Yeah, I can. Oh, but I don't have the cursor. Can we go to the
Change the
first
slide.
page?
You want the slide? Yeah. Different slide? Different slide.
Yes. Um, I feel like a worker from the fields because in my work I don't get to do much time for study. I do that at night, but I'm just giving a summary here of the answer to the essential questions. With regard to euthanasia, and by the way, I think about 3 years ago, I noticed a trend. For some reason, the last 3 years were very the last 3 years were a time where in the disability rights movement, especially here in California, a number of our directors, there are few of us, people with disabilities, who do this work. And I think 5 of my friends died the same year. And so we were grieving at the death of one, and then it hasn't even been three months, another one died, and another one died. But I saw a pattern that frightened me, and it was that a lot of them, just died. There was not even a period of a prolonged hospitalization, a period of, family care that would usually accompany illness, They would just announce that they died, and then the services were done, and then that's it, So I began to sense a sinister trend and wanted to find out a little bit more about how abrupt these people were dying. And I was, when I moved from California, I went for about 14 months to Maryland. In California, on the pro-life area, I was working more on the abortion issue. And then when I moved to Maryland, that was when, at that time, there were 5 bills at the state legislature that were euthanasia bills. And I spoke on those. And so they were defeated. There were many of us who worked on them. And essentially they were defeated. And then I came back to California and found myself being called to fight more of those bills, right? And in the course of that, that time, from the issue of abortion, I've had conversations with people from my circle who were in the medical field. I had asked some friends who were medical students, and I asked, by the way, as part of your training, are you required to do abortions? Because I was concerned about, of course, about all babies, but particularly about babies with disabilities. And I've gained a couple of enemies by raising those issues. And they told me, you're not, don't even bring that up, and with an attitude of anger. So when it came to the other end of life, which is euthanasia, especially when I was in Maryland, I got into an argument, and I didn't mean to, about, because I said, but who defines the quality of life? And why are we not part of that conversation? And I think I said, as recipients of medical care, we have to be part of that conversation. And I was censured, No, you don't know much about medicine, but we know a lot about the experience. So, that resistance, and then the trend of my friends who were dying without that normal, recuperating and, period was really something that was bothering me. So, but looking at those who control our lives. We have, of course, our families, right? Immediate members are families, relatives, friends, very involved in the lives of people with disabilities. When Diane was still in California, we together were trying to advocate for Kenneth Bergstead. Kenneth Bergstead was a young man who was a quadriplegic for 20 years. And he got tired of it and he wanted to kill himself. But all those 20 years he was isolated. It was just his father who he had a social relationship with. And, you know, at the time when he was disabled, there were already many independent living centers in the United States. You know, we already were about access to buses. We were about assistive technology, and all the things we were enjoying as empowered people with disabilities. And those, you know, none of that was getting to him. Why? Because his father, who was taking care of him, had him isolated. So our families have a lot to do with how we perceive the world, how we get out there, and how we make meaning out of our lives. Our doctors, nurses, medical staff who attend to us, you know, they especially. Last month, no, 2 months ago, my uncle, who's 91, had a stroke, his second stroke, and he was in Virginia. And his family was made to sign the DNRs. But lucky for him, the hospital still felt the obligation to tell him, you know, the consequences of the DNRs and would he want to live should he have another stroke. And he said, yes, do everything you can to make me live. And lo and behold, he fully recovered. He's back to the Philippines. When I had him on the phone, he's talking to me as lucidly as when he was 40. And he goes to Mass every day. And he's back to his life, right? So we had a reunion with him on a Saturday. The Sunday, the next day, we had a funeral service for my cousin who was 32, who died just the weekend before because he banged his knee on a piece of furniture. So who has a say in who lives and who dies? Ultimately, we forget though that it's God. You know, my 91-year-old uncle and then my 32-year-old cousin. It's amazing. And then, okay, the medical community, insurance companies, it's getting very insidious now. As an executive director of a nonprofit agency, I have to wrangle with that issue. I mean, how much coverage can I give our staff? You know, it's getting very expensive every year. But to always hone to do the right thing and to have the maximum coverage for our people is always a struggle. And to have to fight for the right therapies is a struggle. There was a time when if my wheelchair broke down, I would just go to a medical repair company and boom, I'm back to rolling. Now, you know, last year I had one of our consumers break her chair and it took her 6 months to get it repaired. So our personal care assistants, workers, our attendants, this is frightening. I'm Filipino, and as you know, a lot of Filipino caregivers work here. And so I have a couple of friends among them, and they tell me how sad they are to see families, you know, manipulate things. They let them, because, you know, a lot of my friends are caring people. They watch the person they care for, and they also watch the medication. And they get involved, you know, they accompany their patients to meet their doctors. And then they're sent home. They're sent home for the weekend. When they get back, their patient is dead. You know, and I've been told these things, and it's a frightening trend. Conservators, legislators who make healthcare policies and who promulgate programs for persons with disabilities, who decide annually, for example, on the funding for the programs. The in-home supportive services program, for example, that keeps us alive, okay? The attendant program that pays for the person to come into your home and do chores for you or provide personal care. That's a state program. The funding over the years has cut down dramatically. So, anyway, so I have, can you have the second slide? Okay. Basically, what we've discussed this morning, a lot of the points, you know, carry over even to the disability struggle. So ultimately, the choice, the question of choice, is the ultimate temptation for disabled and non-disabled alike. For the disability movement, there are two camps. Those of us who are consistently pro-life, you know, who believe that we deserve the funding and the supports for all the things that keep us alive, because we believe in life with its disability as having meaning. And those who believe the same but deviate from that notion in the sense of, you know, I have a right to spell out when and how I die. So they believe that that's the ultimate measure of empowerment, you know, to say how in that way. I'd like to end, and I think I'd like to end with a little story that I think is very telling on this one. Because I have 2 minutes, sister? Huh? Go ahead. Okay. I won't read the whole thing because it'll take. This debate on euthanasia has reached our doorstep at the center, at Calais. And about 2 months ago, I had a call from my mother's friend. And she was, you know, distraught because her friend, you know, a family friend, just had an aneurysm. From being a perfectly healthy person to boom, in a coma. And she and her husband found themselves embroiled in a controversy because this woman who just had the aneurysm had 2 kids. One, a son who was 10 years older than the sister. The son wanted to unplug the respirator, harvest his mother's organs, and just put her to rest. The daughter had a relationship with the mom, was closer to the mom. And here they were, you know, fighting it out at the hospital. And my mom's friend called me. I tried to help them out by getting them in touch with, you know, the pro-life movement here. We even got as far as getting a lawyer to attend the meeting at the hospital. So I couldn't be at that meeting because you know, I'm very busy. But I got, you know, to talk to the lawyer, to the friend's lawyer, and I was told that the meeting went well. There was nothing that was totally agreed upon, but that the pro-life lawyer gave his cards, you know, to the hospital staff and asked them to please not do anything yet to the woman, the poor woman who was comatose. Well, the same week, when the daughter went to visit the mom was missing. They put her away and did not disclose where she was. And evidently they sided with the brother. And between the two of them, the daughter had a speech impediment and a learning disability, but she was very intelligent in her own right. So there's that one scenario. Compare that with last week's, in fact, this week's example. Well, somebody called me almost at the end of the day, and he said, I was referred to you by the Department on Disability, the City Department on Disability. And I'm looking at your website now. And he said, my dad fell on the front steps of his home. They had 2 steps, mind you, and he fell. He hit his head on the pavement, and he broke his neck, and he became totally paralyzed. And he said, my family has already been told to sign the DNRs. And so I'm looking for resources. And so I decided to stay with the guy on the phone and talk to him about all these things, you know, that prove that there's life with a disability. And so he said, okay, I want to, and then he said, you know that I actually work for the Department on Aging, you know, for the City Department on Aging. And I'm aware of some of the programs, but I did not know much about the disability community, the independent living movement, and I'd like to meet with you. So he came. He and his assistant came, and I showed him the center. We have a communication center. We just opened it 2 months ago, and it had the top of the line, you know, communication technology for those who cannot speak, for those who are hearing impaired, for, you know, and everything about the center. And he kept taking pictures. You know, he kept taking pictures. But what struck me was when he first came and I said, okay, Steve, how are you? How's your dad? And he said, do you know that now my dad is excited? He's excited to live, you know. And, you know, the contrast between those two experiences really spell out why we have to be doing what we're doing. I'm part of the Focolare movement, and I remember, and I will end with this, one thing that I've always been mindful about is what Chiara Lubick says. She says, do the good that God requires. Yeah. Do not do the good that He does not require. The notion of, you know, having organs harvested from the terminally ill for those who are alive, apparently it's good. But is it the good that God requires from this situation? Or is it that I was hungry and you gave me food? I was thirsty and you gave me drink? So it's really up to us to make, to be guided by that spirit, you know, especially over the dynamic of life. And we cannot presume and assume that because, you know, the end is good, that the means is always good. It's not always so. So I guess that's it. Thank you.